In Sudan, the military has taken control of the country. Protests have erupted and several people have been killed during the demonstration, and many more have been injured. The civilian government was dissolved early this morning, and the prime minister has been arrested. His whereabouts are unknown. This coup comes 2 years after uprising successfully ousted dictator Omar al-Bashir. Since then, the country has been run in a joint partnership between the military and the civilian government. The military now says it intends to run the country until elections are held in 2023. The Canadian government has condemned the coup in a statement. Quote, "This action is unacceptable and contrary to the will of the people of Sudan. We stand with the Sudanese people in their desire for a democratic future. We call on the military to stand down, honor the provisions of democratic transition, and restore the transition process." Isma'il Kushkush is a Sudanese-American journalist based in Washington. Mr. Kushkush, can you bring us up to speed on the events that transpired before the coup took place today?
So the political and economic situation in Sudan over the past year, as the country was transitioning into civilian rule after the revolution of 2019, was facing major challenges. The economic situation was difficult, political bickering between different parties. And then you had the pandemic. So we saw the rise of voices calling for the end of the coalition government between the military and the civilians, which was supposed to transfer into full civilian rule next month. We saw 2 attempts for coups earlier this month, and protests either supporting the military and much larger protests on the 21st of October calling for full civilian rule. In some ways, this coup is not a surprise. It comes after hints that some sort of action was about to take place. But it's definitely a setback for the democratization process in Sudan.
Yeah, so from your perspective, it sounds like, and from what we've heard reported on the ground, that this was not, as you say, this was not unexpected. This didn't come out of nowhere.
No, absolutely. We did see 2 attempts earlier, a few weeks ago, and then protests that were in support of a military takeover and a sit-in in support of the military takeover. But we saw much larger protests supporting civilian rule, supporting the democratization throughout Sudan on the 21st of October, on the very anniversary of the first popular uprising in the region in 1964, what Sudanese call the October Revolution. Many thought that was something of a signal to the military that if it attempted to do a coup or so, that it would be met with a popular opposition. And that's what we're seeing right now. We've already seen protests and a call for a civil disobedience throughout the country and globally. Sudanese are protesting in front of their embassies and calling for protests. We see that the U.S. has suspended aid to Sudan, $700 million that was just announced a few hours ago. So this is, again, it was not totally surprising, but some at least thought that the huge turnout on October 21st would have signaled to the military to think twice before taking this kind of action.
You mentioned the American response. Well, and we talked about the Canadian response, but what has global reaction been to what's unfolded?
So we see condemnation from the U.S., from Canada, from the EU, concerns from from regional governments. There have been calls to suspend Sudan's AU membership. But I think, Sudan has, when the Sudanese revolution in 2019 happened, the economy was already in a very bad situation. And over the past 2 years, we saw the challenges that Sudan was facing to reform its economy, to bring about a new democratic government. But regional governments there's concern that, the biggest concern that Sudanese have had since 2019 was that the fate of the revolution would face the same fate that other uprisings in the region have faced. And unfortunately, that seems to be playing out right now.
When it comes to things that, aside from condemnation, and you mentioned some of the aid funding might be in jeopardy, but is there anything that countries like Canada could do here in this situation, or the United States? Given the fragile economic situation in Sudan, I think one has to look at enabling if economic assistance or what kind of diplomatic support would enable the military to function. I think there should be a clear message that this is not what Sudan was 30, 40 years ago. I think you have a generation that is set on transforming Sudan into a true democracy. We saw that with the 2019 revolution. And I'm pretty sure that we will see big protests in the coming days, whether in Sudan or even globally, against this military coup. The fear, of course, is that some of this could become bloody. I think international governments and international bodies should keep their eyes on Sudan and to see what is happening and hold those accountable, hold those responsible for disrupting this process, hold them accountable. We've got 1 minute left, but I'm curious as to what you will be watching for in the days and weeks ahead.
I will be looking at the street. I think the protest that brought down the government of Omar al-Bashir in 2018, 2019, I think shook the world. It has been described as one of the most powerful episodes of popular uprisings in recent years. I don't doubt that the people of Sudan can do it again.
Mr. Kushkush, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.